Fabulous being a guest here.
And the show is over.
Oh, I thought I put the fan on slow. You gotta click it and get it like beat. I already see 2 drops on your forehead. I thought you were gonna fade the music. Well, you get three strikes.
All right, we're back live. Technical difficulties cut us off for some reason, but I'm going to cut it short. The intro, that is. I'm here with Mr. What's your name?
Ed Dwight.
Eric Vietnam Sadler. And he is of the Bomb Squad production team. Actually, one of the most iconic production teams in hip hop history. And if you know who Public Enemy, Ice Cube, LL Cool J, Slick Rick, if you know all of those artists, you know that this man has actually worked with legends as he became a legend himself. So, welcome, Mr. Sadler.
Hey, what's up, man?
So, here's the disclaimer. He asked me, he is here in the B room with me right now, and he asked me not to put him on camera. So, and I am honoring that. So, he's actually here. You can actually hear him snacking, breathing, and he will be talking. So
yes.
We're going to get right into it. So pardon my turn of the head as I talk to him to my left.
No, I could just talk to your ear. You know, there's no problem because they want to see your face. Yeah. You know,
nobody wants to see.
Yeah.
What's up, Mr. Sadler?
I'm chilling, man. Chilling. You know.
Thank you for being here. Thank you for doing this.
Hey, I come to see my goddaughter, you know, and visit you, you know, just a little bit, you know,
so,
a little something here.
And another disclaimer: we have been friends for well over 20 years.
Yeah, since the war.
Since the war in the 90s, right? He tried to get me a job as an A&R for a record company, and then he said, "You're too corny. Keep producing and do music and stick with that." And that's what I did. And I followed his advice, and he liked that, and we've been friends ever since. And then somehow he followed me down here to Jacksonville. I don't know how that happened.
Oh, no. I was here. You were here, then you left. Then I came down, and you followed me back.
And then somehow...
Because you were in Jersey when I moved down here.
I was?
Yeah, I moved here in 97.
That's right. I was still in New Jersey.
That's right. So you followed me down here.
He said, "Screw the city," and he moved.
That's not what I said. Anyway, hey, how did we meet?
We met.
Is that in your questionnaire?
Well, that's a story. And no. Why am I going to ask you how we met?
Well, that's how you're supposed to start it off since I'm here in your crib.
Well,
you know, with the pool and the jacuzzi, you know, Mr. Largeness.
So here's the story. We met through a mutual friend, a guy that I actually went to college with by the name of Ab. What's up, Ab? Shout out to you.
Excuse me, Abnormal Dubose.
Abnormal Dubose.
Right. Abnormal, we call him Ab for short, Dubose.
I always called him Ab. I never called him Mr. Dubose. And Ab, and whenever I'm cracking on him, I call him something else.
Right. Ab is short for abnormal. It's not like he got abs or something. Maybe back in the day in college, but you know.
I don't even think he had them then.
All right.
I may have, but no, I never saw.
Well, you got an ab now.
I got one ab. I got a keg right now, no six pack. But yeah, we met. Man, this was in the 90s, like late 90s, coming into not even 2000.
I have no memory. As you know, I have dementia now, so I have no memory. You're going to have to, explain.
And I went to his house and auditioned to become an A&R for a record company that Bill Stepson,
Stepson, yeah, Bill
yeah,
Stepney,
Stepson Records,
Stepson Records,
right,
right?
that he was starting up. And I don't think the project ever took off.
Of course it did. They had Stepson Records. That's a whole nother story. See, I don't even remember any of this.
Yeah, I
I thought Ab just bought you by the crib and then by the studio.
oh,
So I don't even
you didn't know
remember.
I was on. So there's another thing I didn't know. Known the man for 20 years, and I'm discovering things now. So
Yeah, because you remember, I wasn't even involved with Stepson. So I think Ab just is kind of, you'd have to ask Ab. Maybe he'll chime in. It's like, I
well,
thought you just, well, hey, my boy's coming up, man, just to hang out. I was like, all right.
well, if he does chime in, then we'll get the story straight.
All right.
And we got about an hour. I think that's what you're committed to, correct?
I got till Monday at 11 a.m.
All right. So everybody has to stay awake, and oh, Mr. Luzon is on here, and everybody has to stay awake. And give me 1 minute. I'm gonna bring you in just 1 second. But yeah, I was there, and I thought I was auditioning to become an A&R and everything. I was very excited, and I was glad to meet him, and he grilled me about records and stuff like that. I don't know if I passed the test because he never said anything, but he's still here, and we're still around each other, and I guess there is some level of respect. So, and it's all good. And then the rest is history. And speaking of history, this guy has been inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame a few years back.
Nope. The group has, of course. Public Enemy is in the Rock and
As a
Roll Hall of
producer,
Fame. Yeah, but still,
you
the
are
group
now.
has. That's true.
You've done how many records with Public Enemy?
First three albums.
And you are a part of a production team.
Yeah, of course. I'm just saying I'm being specific.
Right.
That's the type of person I am. I'm not in there by myself like Quincy Jones or something. So
Right.
Public Enemy is in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and they're also in the Washington, Museum of American History and stuff like that, and
Right.
Library of Congress, all that sort of stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and that's another thing. He is very detail oriented. So, we're gonna get a lot of facts here. So, let me wave at Mr. Luzon here. What's up, people? Thank you for joining us. So, I want to go way back.
To the troglodytes, I got you.
Yes, I want to go back to the
Mhm.
neighborhood and the dentist's office.
Okay, so you want to go back
I want
to
to go right
Long Island, back to Hempstead, Long Island.
Yes.
Okay.
How did it start? Who came up with the idea
Of what?
of you actually doing music?
All right, so I'll make it quick since we only have till Monday.
We'll go to Tuesday.
Hempstead, Long Island.
Okay.
Hempstead Middle School.
Okay.
In middle school, they always used to have a career day. And at the career day, you'd have like a doctor, and you'd have, somebody who owned a printing outfit and stuff like that. So while we were there, they had a guy come in playing a bass. And he was in there, and he was like hooking up his bass, and all the girls are looking at him like, okay, what's going on here? And so he hooks up in his bass and plays a song called I Just Don't Want to Be Lonely by the Main Ingredient.
Okay.
Cuba Gooding's dad.
Yeah.
Cuba Gooding Sr.
Right.
And he started playing that song, and the girls were like, "Ooh, ah." It's like, that's what I want to do. I want to play the bass. So, I went and talked to my mom and dad. Hey, I want to play the bass.
Right.
And they're like, okay, that sounds fine. And so I was like, all right, so can I have a bass for Christmas? No, we can't afford a bass. So they got me a pair of bongos.
So you started playing the bongos.
Started playing the bongos, even though I wanted a bass.
Right.
So I'm playing the bongos, and I grew up around music in Long Island at that time in the late 60s, early 70s. There were a tremendous amount of bands. Everybody was in a band.
Right.
And my neighbor across the street from me, next to the dentist, who we'll get into, Stephen Cuffey, his older brother, Peter Cuffey, played bass. And he had a bass up in his room, and they had a band called the Soulful Sounds.
Okay.
And so I would listen to that band, and I'm like, man, I really want to play this bass. I got to form my own band. So finally, after a bit of time, a year or two or whatever, my mom and dad finally got me a bass, a little bass. So I learned how to play the bass and decided I was going to form a band. So formed a band with, my memory is going to get me, but it was with my best friend still to this day, Mr. Howard Eady, Jeffrey Barnes, who lived down the street, and I think it was Billy White also on guitar. I've got like a flyer of it, but I forget. So we formed the band, and actually no, we formed the band before I got the bass because I was playing the bongos in it, and we had our first gig at like a church or something for a slice of pizza.
Right.
Pizza then was like 35 cents, so we played for a slice of pizza. And my bongos were so cheap that you couldn't tune them, so I had to get a match, turn the bongos upside down between songs with a match, and tighten the skin.
So you have one note on the bongos.
It was bad. It would be beep, 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 beep. And then by the end of the song, boom, 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 boom. So I'd have to get a match and light it to tighten the skin on the bongos. So
Wow.
then later on, yes, then I got a bass and we formed bands. We're still with my friend Howard Eady. He switched to drums, and we had Carlton McCrimmons and Mac Cheek and a billion bands. Our band was called the first band I was in was called the Ace of Spades, and then we changed it when I formed it with Howard and Carlton McCrimmon and a bunch of other different guys. I'm not going to mention; it's too many. Called the Grand Affair,
Okay.
and so Grand Affair was it. We were doing gigs at the local places, Mr. Hicks Place, Dolphins Cove, a bunch of different places, Danzy's Retreat, all the local stuff around town.
Right.
And so, and that was kind of it. And then I ended up going to another band after that, band called ESP for a bit. But there were a million bands around, tremendous bands in Long Island, Dino and Uniques, Liquid Pleasure. I mean, so it was a million bands. And so it was that sort of thing.
Right.
And that's how I kind of started in music. And also, my big brother, Mr. Marc Michael Sadler, was a big influence on me because I would listen to music. He's about 5 years older than me, in his room, and he'd be playing Sly Stone, but he'd be playing Chicago. He played all sorts of music.
Right.
And back in the late 60s and early 70s, you had WWR, WWRL radio, and they'd play everything.
Right.
You can hear Led Zeppelin, and then you'd hear James Brown. And so you had all of this sort of music kind of coming in that was kind of hitting me in the head at that particular time.
And all those bands that you actually named are very distinctive groups, singers,
Yeah,
musicians,
yeah. Everybody
guitarists.
had their own sound and that sort of thing. ESP, Stratus Funk. I can name off a million musicians who are, just talented and incredible stuff.
And I'm going to
And
circle back to that.
we were all battling together too. It was fun. It was fun.
So,
Oh, I forgot, my boy Neil Edwards was playing sax with me at that time too. In
Neil.
that in that band, the Grand Affair.
Okay.
Yep.
So, did uh did you have to? Was it just were you doing cover tunes or were
We were
you
doing
singing
covers. We were
songs?
doing cover stuff.
Okay.
Doing cover stuff. We tried to do a little bit of writing, but we were most doing cover stuff because we're playing out at these particular places, and they wanted to hear the Commodores, they wanted to hear Brick House, and they wanted to hear all these particular songs. So we learned the songs, we would play them,
Right.
and we wanted to be kind of a combination of the Jackson Five with the Commodores and all of those things together. So we had choreography
Right.
also while we were doing our stuff. So it was a blast.
And how old were you when you were doing it?
14, 15,
Wow.
16, 17.
Right.
Yep, mid 70s. Yep.
All right. Now, take me through from doing cover tunes to writing songs. Like, when did that start?
Well, that kind of happened when my parents and my brother, especially, got tired of us rehearsing in my basement in Long Island, out on Dorland Street in Hempstead, Long Island. They were like, "Yo, you got to get out." It
Yeah.
was kind of cramping my brother's style. His little brother blasting this music downstairs,
Yeah.
that sort of thing. So my parents said it all had to go from my house, and at the same time, the band, we had done it for a bunch of years. It was getting kind of like it wasn't seeming like it wasn't going to go anywhere.
Right.
So my dentist, who my mother and dad were great friends with, who lived across the street, Dr. Raymond Gant, he had a building for a little bit further, a couple blocks from me in Hempstead.
Hmm.
And my dad talked to him and said, "Hey, do you think you can rent my son some space? We're trying to get him out the house with this music." And so I met with Dr. Gant, and he always called me Sadler. Sadler, you gonna cause trouble, Sadler? I know you out there causing trouble in the street. You can't cause any trouble down there at my place there. So he agreed to rent me some space down there for, it was like $175 a month. Now at the same time, we still had the grand affair, and we had been trying to find a keyboard player, and we were auditioning a whole bunch of different people coming around and whatever. And this one cat came up to the door. He came in a cab or something like that, and he came knocking on the door. I answered the door. He said, "Yo, is your big brother around?" Because I'm only like 5'4", and I'm like, "Who are you looking for?" "I'm looking for Eric." "I'm Eric." "Well, you can't be Eric. You too little. You too young, right?" And his name was Charles Cassius. And so he came to the door and he wanted to audition, but like there was nobody there. And I said, "All right, well, do you have like your keyboard with you?" He said, "Yeah, I got this keyboard." And he had this super expensive keyboard called the Oberheim 8. It's an OB8, and it was like, it's an incredible keyboard. And I'm like, "Oh man, he must be really good.
Yeah.
He got this expensive keyboard. It's his."
He
So
had it in a case.
I don't remember it all.
Okay.
You'd have to ask him.
Okay.
So anyway, I said, "Well, look, man, you can come in and I'll teach you all the songs because I know all the keyboard parts, I know all the guitar parts, I know all the parts of the song." So he came in, man, and we rehearsed all night, like till like 3, 4 in the morning,
Wow.
and he learned all the songs, right? So the audition he was coming to was the next day. So I brought him down, my boy Howard, my boy Neil, and they all just, man, he forgot every damn song there was. And he stank. Sorry, Charles. He stank, man. He stank that high heaven. It's
Like
like,
singing
man,
as in performance stank
no,
or
both.
oh man.
Anyway, man.
Well, you
So,
had him up all night until like what
hey,
4 o'clock
man,
in the morning. Get a shower.
whatever it was, man, it was bad. So they're like, "Yo, man, this cat sucks, man. You don't even remember the song." So that was it. He didn't make the band, but we became friends
Right.
because he was driving for a pub taxi, and pub taxi was right down the street from me.
Right.
So he would still come by and I say, "Well, maybe you can audition again. I'll teach you the songs again and this and that or whatever." But we just remained friends, and I'd hang out with him in the cab and we became friends. So I moved all the band equipment down to 510 South Franklin.
Okay.
And it was, just to rehearse with the band.
And we're
And
still in Hempstead.
still in Hempstead.
Yeah.
Yep,
Okay.
about, down 510 South Franklin Street, across from this deli called Hollywood, the Hollywood Deli.
Okay.
And so we're down there with the band.
Right. So the band is now
Hmm.
the band.
The band is still no, just the band. It's still the grand affair.
Right.
And basically, what happened was, and I'd still hang out with Charles from time to time. So what happened was, I got tired of the band. The
Mm-hmm.
band got tired of me.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't seem like it was going to go anywhere.
Right.
People were kind of hanging out and drinking and smoking and not serious like I thought I was at the time.
Right.
And so I'm like dissolving the band.
Mm-hmm.
So still with my best friend, Mr. Howard Eady, I said, "You know what? I'm going to open up a rehearsal studio, and now I can make some money."
Right.
At the time in my brain,
Right.
I thought I was going to make some money with the rehearsal
Well, that's
studio.
where the money starts.
Right.
Yeah.
So I said, my man Charles has this equipment.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to partner up with my boy Charles.
Right.
We'll partner up and we'll call it, we figured out a name. His last name is Cassius. My last name is Sadler. We called it Casad Studios.
That's dope.
And we were going to charge $7 an hour.
Right.
But I didn't really have any equipment. So my best friend Howard Eady, I was able to use his drums, and another cat I was able to use Charles's keyboard. And I just borrowed stuff from people, guitar amps and this and that or whatever. And so built up the studio. Had friends come by and put cork on the wall back in the day and
On
build
all
it.
the egg crates, you didn't do the
No, no, no. We actually went and bought cork on the wall. We put cork on the wall. And then Dr. Gam was like, "Sadler, you can't be playing that music too loud, and it's got to be after I'm working." So the dentist office was open during the day, until, early evening. And my studio was right next to, on the same floor as the dentist. What's up? I hear you. I hear jingle
That is
bells.
my
What's up?
phone one actually ringing, and I we need to get that because that is Erica. We're gonna pause for 1 second.
Okie dokie.
We're gonna keep you on, and I gotta borrow your phone. We'll be right back. We're gonna take a quick commercial break, and we'll be right back.
I don't know if you can squeeze. Go ahead. You need my thumbprint. 773377. Oh, that's not good. Hopefully your camera is off, my brother. Yeah, I do. What's wrong with you, man? You don't know your wife's number?
You said that your mom and dad and brother wanted you out of the house.
The band.
The band out of the house.
Yes.
Sorry for the delay, folks.
Mm-hmm.
But this is something that is common with up and coming musicians and those people who are actually just getting started. Get prepared for this. Because your folks, your parents, are going to be your biggest supporters and your first haters. Right? They're going to ask you to turn it down. Your mom may be like, oh, baby, that sounds good, but turn it down a little bit. Just turn it down just a little bit. And then, like Mr. Sadler said, you got to go. Somewhere else.
Had to go.
Sounds good. Just do it somewhere else. Right? So.
Yep. So I left off with, we're down there and Dr. Gann is doing people's drilling teeth during the course of the day. And then after like 7:00, we had band rehearsal. So we were charging $7 an hour and groups were coming down and they were recording. And when they weren't recording, when they ended, we were playing cards. Like I was playing cards whenever they weren't recording. And even when they were recording, we were playing tunk all day and night long. That's what we do. We play tunk, record, eat some chicken wings and some French fries. And that's all we did. Card players, me, Charlie Cassius, my man Forrest Davis, Mike D, and 40D. And Disco Dave. Can't forget my man Disco Dave, David Felton. Rest in peace. My man Disco Dave. Oh, man. The great Disco Dave. So that's all we did. We just played tunk, and that was it. And so, and what's funny about my partner, Charles, when I wasn't there, he would take the money from the session and go and go to like Atlantic City, or he gamble, or he do some stuff like that. No, I'm just messing with you, Charles. Yeah, but he would just take the money and do stuff. We weren't making any money. It was just fun. Right. So basically, this went on. Oh, what's up? What you got to do?
Is it good?
Yeah, it's fine. Okay. He's messing with the fan. So basically, and I could be skipping some stuff, but that's part of life when you get older. Maybe after about a year or 6 months, I got a call from Hank Shockley. Right. And I had known Hank around because of Spectrum City, one of the most famous DJ crews in Long Island. They threw the best shows and all that sort of thing. And I was wondering how he got my number, but he called me up. "Hey, man, I heard you got some space. Like you can get us into this space." It's like, "Who is this?" He's like, "Hank, for space." I was like, "Okay, you mean the building I'm in? Yeah, yeah. Can you, see if you can hook us up and get us in?" I was like, "All right." So I talked to Dr. Gant. Hey, Dr. Gant, I got somebody who wants to, rent the upstairs space. And he's like, "Sadler, you gonna be responsible for them, Sadler?" It's like, yeah, well, what they do? I said, they're like DJs, but then they're not going to play music. They're just going to store their equipment up there. All right, Sadler, you're responsible for them, Sadler. And I was like, okay. So I told Hank, hey. And so Hank, along with Chuck, Hank Shockley, and Carlton Ridenhour, Mr. Chuck D, they moved in upstairs. But the funny part from my memory is they really couldn't afford it. It was like 225 or something like that,
Mm-hmm.
and they couldn't afford the rent, so they decided to get a partner with them upstairs,
Right.
Everett James, EJ the DJ,
Right.
and he was the DJ around town also, and they were just going to split the rent,
Right.
and so Spectrum City, Chuck and Hank and them would be in one side of this space upstairs, and EJ was going to have the other side,
Okay.
and that was it. And then they moved in.
Wow.
And so, they were upstairs doing the DJ, and we were downstairs doing the rehearsal studio.
Okay.
And so, you want me to keep going?
Yeah.
Okay. And so, as from my memory, I might be off a little bit, but as time went by and, they would do shows, hip hop was kind of,
Getting going.
emerging and,
Yeah.
like really going on. I used to go to the city, to the Roxy. I used to check out hip hop and all that sort of thing, basically by myself when I would go.
Okay.
But Chuck and them had a radio station at Adelphi University, WBAU, run not run, but with Mr. Bill Stepney there and Dr. Dre, Dr.
Right.
Andre Young, Dr. Dre from Dr. Dre and Ed Lover.
Okay.
And they'd be up there and they'd be doing shows and they'd had like local rap acts and people would have to look up the history of WBAU,
Right.
Adelphi University, because that's too long a story
Right.
that I wasn't really involved in. They were involved in, but I would just kind of go up and check things out.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Wait, let me just clarify to the young viewers out there. There's a radio personality in New York City named Dr. Dre. He wasn't talking about Dr. Dre from.
well, as I said, Dr. Dre, people will know Dr. Dre from Dr. Dre and Ed Lover,
Right.
and also from the group Original
Yeah.
Concept that was signed to Def Jam.
I don't think the younger
They
generation
might
knows.
not know, but they know MTV Raps. They might or might not know MTV Raps.
Right.
They can do their homework and look up Dre.
Right.
Dre was the first Dre, that I knew, Dr. Dre,
Right.
that sort of thing. So anyway, make it a little bit shorter, Hank and Chuck and them wanted to, form a group eventually,
Right.
put a group together with Chuck rapping and so forth and so on. At the same time, my partner, Mr. Charles Cassius, he was always already in sort of the music industry
Mm-hmm.
and he was writing songs himself and going in the studio and recording songs himself.
Right.
So I was kind of tagging along with him when he would go into the studio, either to play guitar or just to kind of be a hanger on,
Mm-hmm.
while he was doing his thing. And so eventually he got a record deal before everybody else.
Wow.
He
Okay.
got a record deal and formed a group called Keymatic.
Right.
And they had a tremendous local hit, a hit called Breaking in Space. And in his group, he used Hank Shockley's brother, Mr. Keith Shockley, as the DJ. And Najee, before Najee was Najee,
Right.
was the sax player. And the keyboard player was a woman named Sharon Brown. And right now she manages Macy Gray. But back then he had this group and we would go out and play with him. And he'd like open up and be playing with the Disco Three, who turned out to be like the Fat Boys,
Right.
Madonna, Alicia, not Alicia Keys, but Alicia, all of these sort of Colonel Abrams, Divine Sounds, all these groups. So
Right.
we'd go out and play in the city and go out and play all of these gigs, and I'd kind of just hang around.
Mm-hmm.
And it was kind of really kind of cool. And I just took pictures and kind of hang around. But it kind of being in the studio with him, because he was always recording stars, I started to learn about production
Okay.
because he wasn't into cover stuff. He was into writing his own songs,
Right.
going into the studio and recording. And he would record at a studio called Mike Bona's studio with Mike Bona, uh, Ian London with Kenny Wallace. Forget Sonic Sounds, I think in Freeport or something like that. All these different studios.
Right.
But he also grew up. I'm giving his story now with like Poogie Bell, Bobby Broom, all of these famous musicians from Queens,
Right.
because he had gone to like the School of Arts in Manhattan, whatever it was, man. He grew up in the city.
Right.
So anyway, hanging out with him gave me kind of the production stuff. So I'm hanging out with him, and then he got um, a deal for one of Spectrum City's crew,
Mm-hmm.
who is a cat named Aaron Allen, also known as Butch Cassidy.
Okay.
And so he got him a deal with TNT Records called
Yeah.
Butch Cassidy and the Funk Bunch,
Right.
and with a song called On a DJ's Birthday.
Huh.
And Butch was part of, Spectrum City crew with Hank Shockley and Chuck D, and there's a list of just about everybody.
Right.
So Charles was kind of the first star at 510.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't a star, but he had a local hit and he was doing well.
Right.
And after that, and I don't know the order of things, whatever, Dr. Dre got signed to Def Jam with
Okay.
a group called Original Concept.
Right.
So he was kind of on his way. Meanwhile, back at 510, and also with the Butch Cassidy and the Funk Bunch, I played kind of guitar on the road because I played guitar on the record. And that group was just kind of Butch Cassidy, Charles Cassius himself, Stephanie Cooper,
Right.
who was hanging around the
Who?
studio at 510, and we'd go out on the road. So,
Let me ask you real quick.
mhm.
Def Jam, was it a household name
Oh,
then, or
absolutely. Oh,
at
yeah.
that
LL
time?
Cool J. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Run DMC. Yeah. Even though Run DMC was on profile, but yeah,
Right.
Def Jam was still Def Jam.
Right.
And eventually, Bill Stepney,
Mm-hmm.
who was at WBAU, the disc jockey there, ended up being president at Def Jam
Oh wow.
at the time, a little bit after that. So, anyway, so back at 510, Hank and Chuck and them were still trying to get something going, but they didn't really want to. I don't think this is my version of what I think about it. They didn't really want to sign anybody else. They wanted to do their own thing.
Right.
So they were trying to get investors to invest money into putting them out to do their own Def Jam
Right.
so they can do their own thing. But eventually they got a deal with Vanguard Records.
Okay.
And during this time, this is all happening at the same time.
Right.
Chuck had asked me a couple times to come upstairs and just work on some stuff
Mm-hmm.
because he knew that I, knew how to work music equipment and stuff like that. And nobody else, a lot of musicians were like, "Yeah, rap, that's garbage. Yeah, doing that rap stuff, it's all crap." Most of the musician friends I had were like, "It's crap. It ain't real music. It's
Right.
stupid. We're not going to do it." But I didn't care. I'm just downstairs listening to my stuff. So I'd go upstairs and hang out with Chuck and work on different things at different times.
Right.
And I'm going to go backwards just a little bit
Okay.
because this is kind of important. So during the time that I'm working, me and Charles have the studio. One of Charles' friends from high school,
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Eddie Murphy
Okay.
of Eddie Murphy fame, had just kind of
The Eddie
gotten
Murphy.
Saturday Night Live because he had been a local kind of comedian around.
Right.
We'd see him from time to time. I remember I was the backing band in the talent show and he was the MC.
Right.
And I think we came in second place. It was a group called Gentle Touch. We were backing up, and Eddie was the MC of that show, and Roosevelt. So we'd see him around, but nobody, not really paying attention. And I didn't know him. I'd see him, but Charles kind of knew him because Eddie's brother Charlie Murphy, I think Charles said, used to beat him up in high school and take his lunch money or something. So it's kind of funny. So anyway, so Eddie gets Saturday Night Live.
Uh-huh.
And then his management, Robert Wax or whoever those guys, were like, "Well, we moving him. He need to get out the hood and
Wow.
move, to the rich people part of town,"
Right.
which at that time people thought was Baldwin because it
Okay.
was just it was just a little bit higher. But
Right.
so he was moving to Baldwin, and he told Charles, "Hey, man, I got to make this move. Can I leave this equipment I bought, at your studio?" And Charles was like, "Yeah, you could leave it at the studio," because Eddie was singing at that time and he wanted to do music. He always wanted to kind of sing and do music.
Right.
So
Wow.
he left this drum machine called the DMX at the studio, and it was like $1,000
That
machine.
by
And
Lynn.
no, no, this was different from an Oberheim or
Okay.
whatever, right?
Okay.
So had this DMX, and I was like, man, I grabbed a hold of that thing, man. Like it was, I stayed up 24 hours a day trying to learn that damn thing, man. So he left his
Was a
equipment.
sampler at the same time?
No, the DMX wasn't a sampler. It was before the sampling drum machines,
Okay.
but it was the sort of thing like you'd recognize the sound from Sucker MCs.
Yeah.
That's a DMX.
Right.
Slick Rick stuff with the shaker. That's the DMX, basically,
Gotcha.
that sort of thing. So I was learning that thing backwards and forwards. So Eddie moved the ball went for like 5 minutes, and his manager's like, "Yeah, this ain't it. We moving you to Jersey, like out there with Whitney and Mike Tyson. You getting out of here, away from your hood friends and all that sort of stuff." So Eddie moves over into Jersey, right? So he's in Jersey, and we still got this equipment. So Eddie calls one day to Charles, and it's like, "Hey, man, I know you had your, you've been doing your thing, man, and I know you, so I want you to produce this, be part of producing this record I'm doing with Prince." I'm like, "What?" He's like, "Yeah, Prince is going to send a tape to your studio, and because I'm in transition, he's going to send it to the studio you guys got, and then when it gets there, let me know. We're gonna work on. I'm working on my first album with Prince." And I'm like, "You got to be kidding me!" Because as Chuck D and Hank Shocklee would tell you, I was a fanatic about that type of music, man. I had the Scary Curl. Flavor Flav's brother Steve Drayton used to do my hair because I couldn't afford the real Jerry Curl. So Steve would do it for like $10. I go into Roosevelt, "Yo, Steve, you hook up my hair?" "Yeah, we'll put something in it." So I had my Scary Curl, I had my one glove, I had like the fingernail polish on the piano. I was like, "Yeah, Prince is my man." So back in those days, it wasn't FedEx, it was a courier system or something like that. 2-inch tape, which your audience might not know, comes to 510 South Franklin via courier. I get that thing, man. And we didn't. It was when we say it was the studio. Our studio was a pre-production studio. We didn't have any real recording equipment. Really, we had some cassette recording stuff and stuff like. But we weren't a real studio. It's just pre-production. So the 2-inch tape comes in. I get it in there like it's a golden ball. I'm like golden with the ring. My precious, my precious, my precious. So I open it up and I'm like, "What in the hell?" Because I couldn't see Prince's name. It said Alexander Nevermind, Jamie Starr, and I realized these are Prince's aliases. Man, and it was a song called Chocolate, right? So me and Charles are like, "We can't even listen to this daggone thing, man. Yo, we gotta go, right?" So we go over to Mike Boner's studio. I'm quite sure it was Mike Boner's studio. I'm not positive. Out in West Hempstead, and we put it on. And lo and behold, we hear like chocolate, pop, chocolate. It's like, "Oh shit, it's Prince out this mug. It's Prince." Ah, and we're just like, "Yo, man, we there. We gonna beat the Chargers." Like, "Yep, yep, yep, man. We could do it, man. We together on this, man. We gonna do it." And it's like, so we were stoked, man. We ain't telling nobody. We were just stoked. But the funny thing is, of course, Chuck and Hank, everybody knew Eddie because he's just a local person, So anyway, we get back to the studio. Time goes by about 2, 3 weeks. Next thing we know, we get the call from Eddie's management, basically. "You no name dudes ain't gotta have nothing to do with this. Send the tape to Jersey. He ain't even gonna be working with Prince. Prince is too soft. He gonna do it with Rick James." And so my partner Charles like, "Oh man," but they still Rick was coming into town. They wanted Eddie not to do it with Prince. They wanted him to do it with Rick. And so Charles goes into town. Is like, "Man, that's kind of messed up." So I wasn't going in town because I ain't know Eddie like that. So Charles goes into, I think it's the Red Parrot or one of those clubs out there, Roseland, where the famous skit from Dave Chappelle happened. That whole thing where Rick James and the ring and darkness and all that sort of stuff. My That's right. That's right. Charles was actually there when that was going on. And he came back and he's like, "Yeah, man, we not involved at all, man. They said we could come hang out in the house in Jersey." I was like, "I'm gonna have to take 3 buses and a bike. And why I'm not going to Jersey, man." So that was kind of it. So back to 510 and playing Tunk, back to regular life. You know what I'm saying? So, but at the little bit after that time, just slightly after, um, Hank and Chuck got, the record deal with Vanguard as the group Spectrum City. And so I was supposed to be involved. It's like, "Hey, I'm gonna come in." Nobody's dealing with any money or anything like that. We just all boys just trying to get to where we gotta go, right? So we get out to the studio. I don't know if it was Blank Tapes or some studio out there. And I'm like ready to kind of get down, do some stuff. And I was basically told, "Oh, you're not needed anymore. We're going to get Pinky Velasquez to do it." I'm like, was Picky Velasquez, but he was like this famous kind of semi-famous kind of club producer,
Right.
for that sort of thing. And I'm like, yo, man, I ain't got no money to get home, man. I need that 225.
Right.
And people don't know the 225 was basically like $1 for the subway
Yeah.
to get back to Long Island and then catch two buses and a transfer
Right.
to get back, and then 25 cents for like a what did they call it? It was a mug, little drink, and another 25 cents for a coffee cake.
The little plastic thing
Yep, yep,
with
with
the
the
symbols in
colors.
them. Yep.
Yeah, yep, yep.
Okay.
So I went back and just got back to the studio late at night and just started playing, Tunk. And I
Right.
was like, he said, "What happened, man? You ain't gonna do it." It's like they said they ain't need me. They getting Pinky Velasquez to do it, right?
Right.
So I'm there playing till maybe like 1 or 2 in the morning. Studio phone ring. It's Chuck.
Right.
Yo, man, it's kind of whack. You know what I'm saying? Yo, could yo, man, we'll come and get you, man. Cause we want to do a B-side, man. We just let's come up there and we'll put something together, man, to be so I went back to the studio and we did a song called Check Out the Radio, which is the B-side.
Right.
And the first song on the A side was called Lies.
Yeah.
I think it was called Lies. I don't even barely remember, but I know the song I did was called Check Out the Radio.
Right.
So that night, when I finished up, Pinky's like, "Yo, man, yo, you kind of nice, man. Yo, this is all good, man. Yo, why don't you come hang out?"
Mhm.
I was like, "With Pinky, I don't know. All right, fine, man. I got nothing to do. Y'all paying? I'm hanging out, right?"
Yeah.
So we driving, man. We drive and we getting up into like the South Bronx, right? And so we going uptown, man. We going up there. And I was like, "Yo, what's going on over there?" Right? Because it was this crowd of people around this fence, and Pinky was like, "Oh, that's the Jumbo."
Yeah.
I was like, "Who?" "The Jumbo." I said, "What the hell is the Jumbo?" "The Jumbo Cracks." I said, "What the hell is the Jumbo Cracks?"
Yeah.
"Yo, it's like cocaine. It's the Jumbo Crack. It just started, man. It's like this crack, this soap, this cocaine, and they going crazy for it." I said, "All those people who are hanging out that fence is trying to get the Jumbo Crack." He said, the Jumbo Cracks," and that always stuck in my head because couple years later, it was the epidemic of
Yeah.
it. It had lost its mind. But
Yeah.
that was the first time I remember anybody saying it, and I didn't even know what it was.
So around what year is this?
I have early
So
80s, 82,
I was about to say
83,
it had to
something
be
like
before
that.
85
Yeah,
because
80,
before the crack.
82,
Yeah.
83, something like that.
Yeah. Okay.
So anyway, basically the record comes out.
Jumbo.
It's a brick lampshade. It doesn't do anything like that. And so a little bit time goes by, and up in Mr. Bill's radio station or Dr. Dre, whichever one, Run DMC and them used to come up there a lot
Mhm.
because it was the only station probably in the country at that time, whatever, was playing hip hop because it was a college station.
Right.
No hip hop was played on any type of radio station,
Right.
that sort of thing. That wasn't just a mix show late night like Mr. Magic. So,
Well, put us in the
mm,
mind frame of why hip hop wasn't played widespread back in that time.
oh,
What do you think it was? I know it was a number of reasons, but for the younger crowd out there.
I couldn't really articulate why, except for it's from the hood.
Hmm.
It's ghetto to them. It's not real music.
Right.
And all the stations are owned by people who are not going to give you that sort of chance.
Right.
It's like when jazz first started or blues, it's like, it's underground,
Right.
which was good in a sense, but they didn't play it at all. It was 0% played. So time goes on just a little bit. And eventually, Chuck, Hank, and Keith had done this record, this like demo called Public Enemy Number One
Okay.
that they had put together. And they would play it because up at WBAU, the Adelphi radio station, they would play all sorts of just local hip hop,
Right.
whether it was a Townhouse 3 or local groups around the neighborhood and stuff like that. Even Flavor would have songs on there because he had his own show on that Adelphi radio station called the Flavor Flav Show with the Flavortrons.
Right.
And he would play his own music up there. So somebody at Def Jam, either Run DMC or somebody associated with it, heard Public Enemy Number One and was interested in signing Chuck. This is from my memory of what I know. Might not be totally accurate, but they wanted to sign Chuck.
Mm-hmm.
And so Chuck, met, with them or whatever, and they wanted to sign him as MC Chucky D.
Wow.
And Chuck was like, "No, I don't want to sign, by myself and this and that or whatever. So sometime him and Hank came up with the whole concept for the Public Enemy thing.
Okay.
That's Chuck and Hank, to my knowledge. Those two came up with the whole idea for
Right.
the Public Enemy thing, dealing with Chuck would be the lead. You would have a character called Terminator X. You
Mm-hmm.
would have Flavor, who you wanted to bring along.
Right.
You would have instead of the Fruit of Islam, you'd have Security of the First World, which was basically security force that used to do security for their DJ shows.
Right.
So they started forming the idea for the group that they wanted to do,
Right.
and eventually did get a record deal and signed for.
Okay.
But the interesting thing like that is only two people to the group signed. It
Right.
was only Chuck and Flavor who actually signed the deal to Def Jam.
Okay.
Everybody else was sort of incidental.
Right.
So since they were going to get ready to start working on the album, they asked me
Mm-hmm.
to, hey, can you, the studio, this stuff, can we do stuff together? And I was like, okay, that's fine, but I got to get paid now that there's, sort of like a record deal going on.
Right.
So I made an agreement to do $100 a track.
Mm-hmm.
It would be 12 tracks,
Wow.
and I was going to be happy because I was,
That
the,
sounds familiar.
the rehearsal studio was $7 an hour that I was getting like $1 from.
Right.
So I was broke. So
Right.
I was like, hey, I'll get this money. And, it's like October. By Christmas, I could actually buy some presents for somebody this year
Right.
rather than just like not being around.
Yeah.
I was so broke. So basically, it was like, okay, we're going to go into the studio and this and that, whatever. But I'm not going to get into big details about it, but contracts had to kind of be written for themselves and the record company. And the time they were going to use a lawyer, I had heard that I don't want to get into details, but they weren't going to use the right lawyer to me. So
Right.
I introduced them to Charles's, my partner's lawyer at the time, who I was
Right.
great friends with, Ron Scholar.
Okay.
And I had hung out at Ron's house and knew him through Charles. And it's like, he's an entertainment lawyer. He'll structure a deal with you. And I told Hank and Chuck, whatever you do, and I'm sorry, Ron, but I told him, whatever you do, don't do anything else with him. He's my man, but just have him do the contract.
Right.
And that's it. My advice wasn't heated, and I'm not going to get into everything that happened after that, but
Yeah.
I introduced him to the lawyer. So either way, I'm gonna cut a lot of corners going around here because it's literally 3 days worth of stuff and try to go pretty quick.
Right.
So
That's why we're gonna be here until Monday.
right, so we started recording, and hold on, we can even go. There's so much stuff before that or near the same time that Hank was involved because Hank is basically the genius of it all,
Right.
putting it all together like a Berry Gordy.
Okay.
Because there were so many groups around at that time, Kings of Pressure, there's all that sort of stuff. So I'm not going to remember order of things.
Yeah.
So anyway, back to the Public Enemy stuff. So we go into the studio and get ready to start recording. It's a studio called INS, downtown near the World Trade Center.
Okay.
And I remember the first day I went there, Pee Wee Herman was coming out. He had a song called the Pee Wee Herman Dance.
Dun, 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 dun,
Dun,
dun,
dun, dun, dun. Yep. He was coming out with a Vinnie Bell and these producers, and Keith Sweat pulled up in a mink coat and a Jaguar. I was like, this must be a pretty cool studio here.
Right.
So we get in the studio, and it's like a, not an
Is it Keith
expensive
Sweat?
studio. Keith Sweat.
Okay. All right.
He was there. He was working on his first stuff.
Right.
And I would see them coming in and out. So we got in there, and it was like it wasn't the greatest studio, but it was like, it was okay.
Right.
And basically the deal, from my knowledge, that Hank had negotiated with Def Jam along, Hank and Chuck negotiated, was there is no budget.
Right.
Nobody can come. Nobody could look at, because they didn't try to take a big giant advance. They just wanted creative control.
Right.
Nobody can come down. There's no budget.
Yeah. Push that door. Okay.
There's no budget,
Uh-huh.
and we could kind of just do what we want.
Right.
But at the same time, whatever Hank and them negotiated, they knew that we were serious musicians. We weren't drinking and smoking and hanging out. None of that stuff. It was literally all business.
Right.
We do our pre-production, then we go in the studio.
Mm-hmm.
So we go into the studio and we start working on stuff. And I was basically the only one in there, kind of had been in the studio a million times before
Right.
to work the equipment and do all of that stuff. So 90% of the time it was me and Hank and Chuck working on the equipment, doing that stuff. And we had a studio engineer there named Stephen Lindsley. And at that time, at the beginning, sort of, and this isn't the beginning of hip hop, but the beginning of when I was in hip hop, having worked on R&B and being in the studio for different things, engineers didn't like a lot of hip hop artists. They or producers. They figured they didn't know what they were doing. They're ignorant. They have nothing to do with music, and then most of them had that attitude. And Stephen Lindsley, he a little bit had that attitude, and so everything we were trying to do, he would argue with Hank about. And Hank's like, "Well, we just want to. No, you can't do that. Well, we just went. No, you can't do that." And I told Hank, I said, "Look, man, I could do some of this. I can't mix and all of that, whatever, but I could put the plugins and we can record, man. We don't need to do this." And my mentality was that one of when I listened to Prince, there were no rules. There shouldn't be any rules. We're not going to blow out the speakers. One good thing about this, we weren't 16, 17, 18 years old. We were all in our 20s. We were in our early 20s. So we were men. And so we started recording and we just started going through track after track after track after track. And then it was coming down because Chuck and Hank were pretty brilliant at um, the order of things. We were going to lay all the stuff that I had written and we had put together and stuff like that. Then we were going to bring in flavor. Then we were going to bring in the DJ and then special stuff, all in order. So for about 2 weeks, I just laid everything, absolutely everything, every instrument, this and that or whatever. And then it was coming time for the DJ. So
Well, let me ask you a technical question.
Yes.
While you're right there, 'cause
Yeah.
you're in the studio now.
Hmm.
Public Enemy is now forming. It's not fully there.
No, it's formed. It's a group.
So Public Enemy is formed. It's
Right.
a group. The concept is there.
Yes.
Now you got to do the music.
Now we got to do the music.
So as a producer, which is the role that you actually stepped into, but you said something earlier where you called yourself a musician. And you weren't.
Well, I'm a musician who knows how to sort of produce from hanging out with my partner Charles,
Right.
but I know the studio,
Right.
and that's kind of what it is.
So at that moment, while you're creating in the studio, were you striving for perfection?
No, we were just trying to figure it out because you had
Right.
three different things going on. You had songs that I had put together along with kind of Hank and Chuck of us working together to figure stuff out.
Right.
I'm doing all the instrumentation and playing all this sort of stuff.
Right.
Hank and Chuck are trying to figure out how does this all work in the studio, like for real, and that sort of thing.
Right.
And also trying to be creative.
Right.
So doing all the pre-production back at 510 helped us a lot. So we were mostly coming to the studio to lay stuff down and add stuff with it because we didn't have the same equipment.
Right.
By the time I got to INS, it's like, okay, they have a NSP 12, not a 1200.
Right.
There's no sampling. So you got the SP12. We had Simmons drums. We had all of these things which I knew from the studios and this and that, whatever, but nothing really to sample except for this. It was a delay system called the Bell system that you could sample in for literally 1 second and that sort of thing. So everything else really had to be kind of manipulated and cut and that sort of thing. So I laid all the stuff I could lay down. And then Chuck was like, all right, well, we got to bring in, the DJ. So we brought in Terminator, whose name was Norman Rogers. And the way he kind of got in the group, from my knowledge, basically is Hank wanted Keith. I think Keith Shockley was supposed to be in it, but whatever happened, he wasn't going to be the DJ. Right. And so they needed another DJ, and there was just nobody around. So Norman, who used to spin at one of their clubs, he was sort of like a blender, blending songs together. He didn't cut or nothing like that. He just blended. So they're like, oh, we'll just get Norman. We don't have anybody. Got Norman, and Norman is the most loving, caring teddy bear, beautiful human being there is. He's just this special man. But to give him the name of Terminator X, they kind of decided, yo, man, you can't talk. You speak with your hands, because if anybody hears you talk and sees who you really are, it won't work as a Terminator X. So he became the DJ. So when they brought him in to do kind of the scratching on the first record, he could do some stuff, but it's not totally what the group needed. So then they brought in the technician, Johnny Juice Rosado. And Johnny Juice was one of the most unheralded, greatest DJs at the time, at least that I knew.
Right.
He was ridiculous. He's like a computer. He
Yeah.
could do anything. Plus, with the history of being a b-boy and graffiti artist, he basically did everything. So Norman came in and did his stuff. Then we brought in Juice, and Juice came in and it was just like,
Right.
oh my God, like he's coming up with incredible ideas. You tell him to do something, it's 64th triple note, just coming right here. It was just absolutely incredible.
Right.
See, he came and did his thing, and then Chuck. People don't realize, man, that Chuck would spin and do some DJing too, some cutting too.
Right.
It was awful to me,
Yeah.
but it's only because he created a rhythm that was just so bizarre because he could see inside of other stuff. Or did they? Yeah. It was just
Right.
so the combination of Norman, Johnny Juice, who was the vast majority, and Chuck was just ridiculous.
Yeah.
And then you add in Keith and Hank, and people always ask me, how did you guys work? And I'm like, well, it's just like different things coming from different directions, smashing to each other, and it was
Right.
basically my job to make it work some
Right.
sort of way musically
Right.
because I could never come up with the parts
Mm-hmm.
that Hank or Keith could come up with, especially Hank, because Hank is not musical and he
Right.
doesn't want to be musical.
Right.
He once told me, if I hear that, I don't want to hear anything nice. No, leave your music. No,
No
just no,
melodies.
no,
Nothing. Yeah.
no. I don't want to. No
Chords.
sense. No,
Yeah. That's what I used to
nothing.
get.
He's just kill. He's like, no,
Right.
no. I was like,
Yeah.
okay, I could do that, but I have to make it as a musician
Right.
for the public resolve somewhere. It has to make some sort of
Right.
musical sense. So it's like atoms colliding and basically exploding.
Right.
So we're at about the 3 week mark, and Bill Stephanie comes in because he was the president of Def Jam at that time, and he brings in like Vernon Reed,
Mm-hmm.
to play some
Yeah.
guitar and a couple other things that he kind of bought in. And
Right.
one day, Russell Simmons comes in.
Mm-hmm.
So Russell comes in with Curtis Blow,
Yeah.
and I see them sitting there. And meanwhile, nobody knows who I am
Right.
because I'm literally nobody.
Yeah.
All of these people coming in, oh, Terminator X, Chuck D, and Hank who signed the deal, and Professor, all that sort of thing. And they're like, who is this little dude with the scary curl?
Yeah.
And I'm just kind of producing and running the show and doing everything I need to do.
Right.
But I had known Russell just slightly. So Russell comes in with Curtis Blow, and they're listening to a song, and I see them looking at each other like, what in the hell is this? Like they had no clue what it was.
Right.
They were looking at each other like this is just some noise and some garbage, and whatever it is, this and that, whatever. And so I looked at Hank and Chuck and I was like, I thought nobody's supposed to be down here. They're like, yo, man, well, it's Russell. He just wanted to come for a minute.
Right.
So they were only down there for like a minute and they came down, but they were looking at it like this is horrible.
Uh,
But a lot of people don't know that Russell didn't sign Public Enemy.
right.
It was Rick Rubin. It was Rick Rubin's vision
Yeah.
of what Public Enemy could be.
Oh wow.
And so Russell was more into at the time, the R&B and the soul and the Black Flames and all that sort of thing. He later came around to it, but at the beginning he had no clue.
Right.
So basically we finished the album in about 28 days,
Right.
literally a month,
Mm-hmm.
beginning to end, everything done, right? So now it's like the beginning of December. And I'm like, I'm gonna get paid. They gotta give me my $1,200. I'm all done. We are good.
$1,200.
I'm like, I'm rich.
Yeah.
I am like so happy, right? So time goes, a week goes by, and I'm like, yo, man, Hank, yo, what's up, man? Oh yeah, the check's coming, check's coming.
Uh,
I said, yeah, I know it was like Christmas because check's coming.
uh,
Week later, what's up? The paperwork is Christmas time. Yeah, I know it's Christmas time,
right.
man.
Right.
So I was not very happy, man. Finally, like a couple days before Christmas,
Uh-huh.
I get my check, right?
Right.
And back then, what you gonna do with the check? Ain't no check cash. What you gonna do with a $1,200 check
No
that they don't think is real? But
ATM
oh
card.
man,
Yeah.
it was brutal. But I made it in time, and I got uh, Hank helped me or Chuck helped me to get the check cashed, and I was able to buy some gifts. And I was like, I was so happy, man.
Right.
I was one of the most happy people in the world. I'm down at 5'10.
Yeah.
They got the record coming out and all that sort of stuff, man. So I thought I was good.
So Public Enemy's first record comes out. You got everything that you needed from it, So
I had thought at the time,
you
right?
thought at the time.
Mhm.
So it was such a process just to get to that point where a lot of people, if we rewind way back in the story, I think I put your phone right there.
Oh, I'm good.
I did give you your phone back, right?
It's okay. Yep.
So if we rewind way back in the story, it didn't start out as what you thought,
Mhm.
but it just morphed into what it is that we know today.
Um,
And you didn't. There was no forethought of making it that. It just happened.
it just kind of, yeah, it just kind of happened. They
Right.
got the deal, working on the rec, didn't know what was going to happen, didn't really care that much.
Right.
I was a big fan at the time of Run and Houdini as a musician. My the person I was following at that time was Larry Smith because he was adding music and
Right.
doing his own thing, and that made me think, well, maybe I could do my own thing. But I thought it was a one-off. I was like, that's done. It's going to be what it's going to be. But that wasn't Hank and Chuck's vision.
Yeah.
So Hank had a tremendously more giant vision, and he ended up signing a bunch of other groups that I started working with, and this and that, whatever. So the only upsetting part at the time for about 2 seconds was the record had come out.
Mm-hmm.
Now the group is getting ready to kind of go out and do its thing.
Mm-hmm.
And Hank is starting for us to produce some other things since I was basically the resident
Right.
person writing and doing the majority of the stuff. But the album comes out, and my boys at the Tunk game are like, yo, man, you see the album credits? I was like, what credits? Oh, to the album, man, the P album, man. Yo, you see what they did? I said, what are you talking about, right? So I look at the album, right, which basically, beside Public Enemy number one and one other song, I had kind of written and
Right.
worked with every single song,
Right.
and I'd laid everything down and whatever. So I see the credits where it said drum programming Hank Shockley. I was like, okay.
Right.
At the time in my brain, I was like, well, he put it all together. He's the Quincy Jones, he's a genius, but he didn't know how to turn on a drum machine in my brain.
Right.
And then it said minimal. The word minimal was used. Minimal synth programming.
In credits. Okay. And
Minimal synth
what was your name next to it?
programming, Eric Sadler.
Wow.
Minimal synth programming, Eric Sadler. And I'm like, oh man, really?
Right.
Really? Minimal synth programming,
Right.
Eric Sadler. And out of all the songs, they gave me credit on one song. I don't even remember what the song was. So I was like, and my boys were like, yo, man, screw that, man. This is what I said. Yo, I got paid. We playing cards. I'm all good. It
Right.
don't matter at all.
Right.
Right. So I'm just gonna take it as a lesson learned to I should have been paying more attention
Right.
to the credits and the songwriting and all that sort of stuff. That's my bad. I don't blame anybody.
So that was the beginning, and
Yeah.
then it went into Bum Rush the Show, Takes a Nation of Millions. So
Yeah.
what was that?
Bum Rush the Show was the first one. And then,
Right.
before the second one, Takes the Nations.
But the success is starting to build. The
Is
name is getting out there. Public Enemy is getting out there.
the first album it got out there a little bit only because they were on the road with like the Beastie Boys and they were doing the circuit for
Beastie Boys.
Murphy's Law. They were getting out there a little bit, but you can only get out there if you got a hit.
Right.
It's New York rap time where you got got insane amount of rap coming out that's just destroying at that time. So they the name was a little bit, but not really.
Right. So if it's just a little bit,
Hmm.
why is gaining credit for the work that you do like so important? What would you have done differently to maybe
Well,
gain?
anybody who works on anything wants just credit for it.
Right.
If you write something, you want your name to be in the credits,
Right.
which you feel you deserve.
Right.
So that's important to anybody. You do work, you want to get paid, of course, but you also want the credit for what you did.
Right.
But like I said, it lasted in my brain about 2 minutes because I was like, I got the money, it's fine. It's my own fault.
Okay.
I need to pay attention more to the business side as far as who's doing the credits, what are the credits for, this and that, or whatever, because that stuff goes through a lot of hands.
Right.
You can't put blame on one person in that aspect. You could, but I never would.
Right.
It could go to places like, oh, we don't have enough liner space.
Right.
Or, well, who's this? He doesn't really matter. Well, he's not on the copyright, so his name doesn't need to be there. As far as who's doing the copyrights, who's putting the paperwork in for these songs.
Right.
So that was my own fault for myself. So I left it alone.
Right.
into the next album.
Our good friend Kyle Jason says, "What's up?" And he's asking why you weren't on camera. And he should know that Mr. Sadler does not go on camera.
I do not do photographs. I do not get on camera. No.
And he says he's so happy to hear E telling the truth.
Parts of my truth,
Yeah,
just a little bit. I still got to leave out stuff, Kyle, because it's just like that.
yeah,
You got to leave out certain things because that's just it.
yeah.
No need to go there and create too much havoc.
Good to see you
So
on here, Kyle. Miss you, man. Been a minute.
man, y'all got hopefully y'all all heard his new single, man. Oh, he got a song out now. Oh my god. Ooh,
How come it's not
ooh,
dropping this
dog.
week, Kyle?
Man, it is ridiculous. It is
Me too,
absolutely,
bro. Hit.
absolutely ridiculous, man.
So I wanna fast forward because we are over an hour now, and I thank you, and I don't want to hold you or keep
Well,
you.
you're gonna have to do a part 2 and 3. Is that it?
It looks like it, but I want it to be continuous some way somehow. So we're gonna have to get you back on here one more time
Yeah.
and figure out where to pick up. But I want to talk about something real quick, and this helps all the young artists. Um, Advice. They're starting out. They don't have much, but they want to do something.
Oh man, oh
But
the old advice thing.
yeah,
Work and write and write and write and work and write and do stuff for free.
but
I know that
so
sounds crazy, but that's basically what I did. I just wrote songs. Wrote, work with people who are talented, work with people, just keep doing your thing. And eventually, if you got any type of gift and you work hard enough, you'll make it.
let me attach this question to that question.
Hmm.
They can work. Nowadays, technology is providing anyone with anything that they want to make a decent beat.
That's a double-edged sword, though, man.
Right.
It's a double-edged sword,
I mean, there's no figuring anything out. There's no figuring out a sound. And because of that, I think, in my mind, that's why everybody sounds the same.
Yeah,
Right.
you know.
But what would you say to these young guys that are out there writing songs and Sensei Aaron Allen?
Yeah, that's that's Aaron Allen, Butch Cassidy.
There it
That's the
is.
guy I was talking about earlier on.
Okay.
Yep, signed to TNT Records.
Wow. But the question is, how do you stand out from the norm? What do you think it would take?
Okay, here's a really great answer to that question. You ready?
Go.
I don't know. I've been retired for a long time.
Right.
It all seems to be going very well.
Yeah.
It's it's a struggle. You should ask yourself,
Right.
ask probably Kyle, who puts out stuff. Ask a lot of people, Dinko D, and this and that, whatever. Who have tremendous talent
Right.
and great songs.
Right.
You'd have to ask them how tough it is and what you need to do. I gave it up a long time ago because when the music business started changing and Napster and lawyers and accountants started getting against the creativity, I'm like, I'm not going to complain about it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm done. When everybody's chasing a single rather than a concept and an album and all of that sort of stuff,
Right.
learning a lot from Hank and Chuck and just all working together about just creativity and trying to create a concept and a theme and great stuff is kind of the most important thing.
Okay.
So I don't know about the what people should do now.
Right.
I know they should just write and get their stuff out and work
And
and
work
work
and
and
hustle.
work.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. So with that being said, there are a lot of people creating what's called hip hop now.
It's hip hop.
You claim it as hip hop. So what do you think of today's hip hop? When you hear it on the radio, it's either passing by on the street or you hear it in a local
I can't give an opinion on it really because I don't listen to it basically
right.
at all.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's Kendrick or J. Cole or certain people who I'll hear some things, I'm like, man, these cats' lyrics
Mm-hmm.
and what they're doing is kind of incredible. But you
Right.
probably got 10,000 incredible people out there because
Right.
instead of it just being like in my day where you had 307, Now you have 387,212 dope MCs that, it's like my son. They find this stuff. Everybody finds their little niche.
Right.
It could be a little group from Russia who's doing their thing and whatever, and it's like, man, I love that, man. It's great.
Right.
Everybody can find their own little thing now. It doesn't have to be this giant thing.
Right.
Groups can make money, off of 60,000 things sold and everything else. There's so many ways to monetize now. That's the great thing about it. If you know how to do it, you can make money and make a living and just be happy
Yeah.
creating what you want to create.
Right. So
No rules and regulations.
so speaking of, if you don't listen to, who do you what do you listen to mostly?
I listen to friends
Um,
who have stuff going on, and just like an older person, you listen to the greatest stuff of all time. From Hendrix to Earth, Wind and Fire to the classic stuff. To I listen to some Teddy Riley. I listen to just about. I listen to the classic things from my stuff.
right.
And my friends are like, man, you ain't you gonna like listen to none of stuff? I was like, I can listen to whatever as I want to listen to.
So
People will send me stuff like I remember with Anthony Muzan. He was in my car one time and I'm listening to Charlie Brown from Leaders of the New School.
right.
Some stuff he had done 15 years ago.
Right.
That's incredible.
Right.
I mean, it is so good. So I treat it like I would be listening to Cool in the Gang.
Yeah.
It's so good. Just because nobody else ever heard it
Shout out
doesn't
to
mean,
Phil. Mhm.
that I can't listen to it.
Right.
And you got a lot of groups like that in Long Island
Yeah.
and all over the place that it's like, man, those songs were great. Nobody ever heard them, but I got them and I'm
Right.
just going to enjoy them.
Right.
So, as you said, the new stuff, I just, I don't listen to radio.
Right.
And if I'm not listening to radio, where am I going to hear it?
Yeah.
Unless I'm searching it out.
Right.
And I'm not searching it out at this particular
But if
moment.
someone said, "Check this out," you would.
People who know me, they don't send me stuff because they know I was like, don't send me anything.
Yeah.
Every blue moon, somebody might send me some, yo, man, this is that. And I was like, really? Really? And that's another reason that it all ended for me because people ask me, it's like, don't you want to work on this? And I said, I am so spoiled.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah.
Chuck,
Yeah.
Ice Cube,
Uh-huh.
LL,
Yeah.
Slick Rick, Dougie Fresh,
Right.
Big Daddy Kane, you know, who's going to come along and be like, oh man, this guy is so much better than all of them. I need to come out of retirement. Busta,
Right.
Charlie Brown, Dinko,
Right.
TA,
Yeah.
Tony Allen from the Townhouse 3 ended up being Son of Berserk.
Yeah.
Pep Jawel, the list could go on and on from just MCs I know who will destroy
Yeah.
in one verse a lot of people who are out there now.
Right.
So
I hear verses coming on.
I'm
I
like,
hear verses.
I'm really, really, really gonna come back in. I'm too spoiled.
Right. So
You know.
let me ask you this, because we're gonna do a. I want to do a quick lightning round with you. Well, not a lightning round, but I want to know your top favorite artist that you've worked with. Top three.
No, it doesn't matter. I don't care.
Mhm.
Of course, Chuck and PE and Flavor and Griff and Brother James Norman, James Bond and Terminator, the Public Enemy crew.
Yeah.
Ice Cube, because he was just a genius
All right.
at that time.
You.
Chuck and Cube, I'd say are my favorites. Everybody else, I'd put like in an order nearby as far as
So who would be number three?
I wouldn't really have an ever three because every experience has been different. Like working with LL and Big Daddy Kane, their talent level in the studio and their expertise and knowing their craft is unbelievable.
Right.
You're talking about people who can do things in one take and it's just brilliant.
Right.
Working, it's just unbelievable.
Right.
But some people would say, well, you worked on the Poison album with, Belle Biv DeVoe.
Right.
And it's like, that was a blast,
Right.
but in a different way
Right.
because they were already superstars. And so I had been used to controlling studio sessions,
Right.
which is, hey, there's no drinking, there's no hanging out. We here for business.
Mhm.
And that's just what it is. Who is he, Chuck? Who's this little dude? Why is he in charge? What's going on?
Right.
We're all about business. But when you're dealing with superstars
Yeah.
like Belle Biv DeVoe, it's like They worked, but it was also party time
Yeah.
too at the same time. It was a whole different animal.
Yeah.
But people like Cube, 100% business. LL,
Right.
100% business. Daddy Kane, 100% business. Slick Rick, 100% business with a little bit of liquor and a little bit of craziness,
Right.
but still business,
What
man.
about Dougie?
All business, man.
Yeah.
One of the most intelligent cats that I know, man. A Virgo like me.
Yeah.
Just a,
Yeah.
these guys are,
Big shout
man.
out to Dougie Fresh too.
I don't think a lot of people, unless they really knew them and work with them, understand how brilliant these cats are and how dedicated they were
Right.
to their craft of and being in business.
Right.
And that's another reason that I left was I remember working with I won't mention any names. It was an artist of Puffies
Mm-hmm.
that he wanted me to work with. And we got to the studio. He shows up 6 hours late with like hookers and weed and all of that. And I'm sitting there and I'm like,
Wow.
and it's like, okay, he's horrible to begin with.
Did he have a record out already?
He had a record out and he was doing something else. And it was like, I don't want to do this anymore.
Right.
I'd rather watch grass grow or count sands on the beach
Right.
than have to deal with this.
Right.
I don't care how much money is involved.
Wow.
And that's why to this day, people, man, you could get like $1 million. Give me $4 and a sandwich for me to be happy.
Right.
I'll play some tunk with my boys, hang out with you, Mr. Marc, MRK Wiggins. I'm all good. But to
Yeah.
deal with that,
Right.
no.
No, thank you. Right.
No. And here's another factor in it as I get ready to go because our time is up is I'm like Jordan in my mind
Mm-hmm.
coming back, playing in the Wizards and getting my shot blocked by like Mark Price or something.
Right.
I've been retired a long time. You just can't dive back into it.
Right.
You have to keep this thing going to be have the cusp and the mindset of it.
Right.
Right now I'd be airballing everything.
Right.
And I don't have the will any longer to give 100%
Right.
or one hundred and twenty
That's deep.
percent,
That's deep.
and that's what you have to give. And I've
Yeah.
told you that a million times.
Yeah.
You're giving like, oh, you're gonna do this or do that. You're gonna give like 70% or 60% because you gotta no
Yeah.
100% or more or nothing
Don't do it. Right.
because it's a little bit of luck anyway.
Right.
People around Hempstead and in Long Island, a lot of people were way more talented than me
Right.
at everything. I just worked a little bit harder.
Right. So I want to thank you for being here. It means a lot to me that you actually are doing this, and we may have to do a part two because there's a lot. Like I
Yeah,
said,
we got to about 10%.
yeah, that was only 10%, but I got like 9 pages of like everything in here, and I want to leave it with a cliffhanger because in here, and since it's actually a popular thing here right now, Janet Jackson actually just came out with her documentary, and guess who was asked to do? Was it Control? Not Control.
The track was Rhythm Nation that she
Rhythm
asked
Nation.
Chuck to do.
Right.
Right. And to be involved with doing a remix for it.
Right.
Right.
So Rhythm Nation, Janet Jackson. We want to find out what happened with that, and we're gonna leave it right there until we come back to be scheduled. And I'll let you guys know, and we'll get Mr. Sadler here back in the B room with Marc Wiggins, and we'll find out what happened. So, just to let you guys know, this is going to be broadcasted also on YouTube, and you'll be able to find this, and I'll share that information in the bio, and I'll have this also on Instagram. So, and then before you go, I want to tell you. You said something about don't send me anything, Mr. Sadler. Don't play me any. I don't want to hear anybody's records. And he means that. And let me tell you the story that I personally went through with him. So he gives me the keys to his studio in New York City, and we're sitting there, and I got people coming in, and a guy named the Wizard. That's what his name was. Whatever. He brings this group in, and I tell this story all the time, and he's not embarrassed about it, right? So he brings this group in, and Eric and I are just sitting there side by side, looking at the Wizard and his group, And the guy's like talking fast, yeah, and they could do this, they could do that, and if you could do this, and hey Eric, you want to hear him sing? You want to hear him sing? Eric was like, no, I don't want to hear him sing. And Eric, you got to hear him sing. You got to hear him sing. I don't want to hear him sing. I don't want to hear him sing. Eric, you want to hear? Okay, honey, get up right now. Sing for Eric. Sing for Eric. She gets up. She starts singing. Eric walks out of the room. Nothing said. He just got up, walked out, slammed the door, and leaves me there sitting, listening to this lady sing. I didn't know what to think. I was like, wait a minute. What am I going to do with them without, why? It was just an embarrassing thing for me, but not for him, because he means it. Whatever he says, he actually means. He is my brother. I love him to death, and I appreciate him being here.
Yeah, that's made me look pretty bad. But the bottom line to that is
that did not make you look bad.
Well, for me, it was a matter of I'm not trying to waste anybody's time.
Right.
I'm not trying to blow smoke at anybody. I'm not going to waste the time.
Right.
So, people need to be told the truth, or what I figured was my truth at the time.
Right.
Keep doing it, but no.
Yeah, looking back on it, it was the funniest thing. It is the funniest thing. And I told that story more than one or maybe 5 times.
Yeah, I went home and changed the diaper. That was about it. Not mine. My daughter's there.
Exactly. But oh man. I was like, what?
All right, so let's do this again same time next year.
Same time next year. I'll let you guys know. Thank you for joining us in the B Room with Marc Wiggins. This show is all about, finding out what's going on with music, bringing musicians on, giving some light, sharing some love, and it's also about bringing audiences together. So I am a producer. I am a musician. I have been ever since I was 6. And my love for music led me here. And I had another passion, which was real estate. I always wanted to do something in real estate. So I actually became a real estate agent down here in Jacksonville, Florida. So I get to walk in 2 worlds because of the experience that I have and the friends that I have. So if I could bring this world to this world and bring them all here in Jacksonville, that's the point. So you guys tune in and follow me, share it, and let's get going. All right, 2022 is set up to be a huge year for everybody if you believe it. And remember, if it's not 100%, like Mr. Sadler said, don't get involved. See you guys next time. Love you guys. Bye. All right. Please let me be able to share it.
Nope. Just shut it all down. It didn't exist. I'm pressing the delete button. People who heard it, and the rest are out of luck. Let me give Daquan a call.
Wow.
Are we off? No video?
Let me end this one. This one should be going to YouTube. I'm interested to see how